Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to Ancient Epics, the place where the greatest stories of humanity come back to life. On a summer afternoon in the year 1577, beneath a sky bruised with thunder, a black shape tore through the wooden doors of an English church. It left scorched claw marks on stone, struck down worshippers without a sound, and vanished as suddenly as it appeared. The event was recorded not in legend alone, but in printed pamphlets, parish records, and the frightened memories of a coastal people. For centuries afterward, travelers in East Anglia spoke in hushed voices of a gigantic dog with burning eyes, roaming graveyards, crossroads, and lonely roads. It was not merely a ghost story told to children, but a presence feared by farmers, sailors, monks, and magistrates alike. This creature became known as Black Shuck. Unlike many myths that drift loosely through time, Black Shuck stood at the uneasy border between folklore and history. Chroniclers named dates, locations, and witnesses. Churches still display scars attributed to its passing. Paths once avoided at dusk remain etched into the cultural memory of England's eastern counties. This was no distant dragon of a forgotten age, but a shadow that walked among early modern people. In villages mapped and named under the same constellations that still turn above Britain today. From these dark roots grew a figure that would later echo through Gothic literature and modern fantasy, inspiring the shape of spectral hounds that haunt castles and forbidden forests. Yet the original Black Shuck was older, deeper, and more complex than any later retelling. To understand it is to step into a world where nature, faith, fear, and imagination merged into a single watching presence on the edge of firelight. In the low, marshy lands of East Anglia, where the soil lies flat and the horizon stretches wide, stories have always traveled easily. The counties of Norfolk, Suffolk, and parts of Essex are shaped by ancient rivers. Shifting coastlines and long roads that once connected Roman settlements, Saxon villages, and medieval ports. In these open landscapes, darkness arrives swiftly. Fog rises from the fens. The wind carries sounds for miles. Long before street lamps or paved highways, a lone figure walking at night was vulnerable to both real dangers and imagined ones. The name Shuck is believed to come from the Old English word skucka, meaning demon or fiend, or from a dialect term meaning shaggy or rough-haired. Both meanings suited the creature described by witnesses. Black Shuck was said to be the size of a calf or horse, with matted fur as dark as peat soil, eyes glowing red or fiery yellow, and paws that left no ordinary tracks. Sometimes it appeared headless, sometimes with a massive head that seemed too large for its body. Its silence was as terrifying as its form, for it rarely barked or growled. It simply appeared, watched, and followed. In medieval belief, dogs held a complex place. They were guardians, hunters, and companions, but also liminal creatures, standing between the domestic and the wild. Across Europe, supernatural hounds guarded the realms of the dead. In Norse mythology, the hound Garmr watched the gates of hell. In Celtic lands, the Cnn ran through the night sky. These ideas traveled with migrating peoples, blending into local traditions. In England, they took root in Black Shuck. The most infamous encounter occurred on August 4, 1577, during a violent thunderstorm. At Blithburgh Church in Suffolk, congregants gathered for Sunday service as lightning split the sky. According to contemporary accounts, a great black dog burst into the church, running among the people. 2 were killed, several injured, and the church door was marked by deep gouges, still visible today. On the same day, miles away in Bungay, another church reported a similar visitation. The coincidence of time and description cemented the belief that Black Shuck was no ordinary beast. Natural explanations were later proposed. Lightning strikes, ball lightning, mass panic, or collapsing structures may have caused the deaths. Yet to the people of the 16th century, such distinctions mattered little. The event carried meaning beyond mechanics. It was interpreted as a warning, an omen, or a judgment, shaped by a world steeped in religious symbolism and cosmic fear. The dog, already a figure of folklore, became a vessel for that terror. Black Shuck did not always bring death. In some stories, it merely followed travelers, padding silently beside them until the edge of a village was reached, then vanishing. Those who survived such encounters often spoke of a strange sense of protection afterward, as if the creature guarded borders rather than crossed them. In this form, Black Shuck resembled a psychopomp, a guide between worlds, watching over thresholds where life brushed against death. Astronomical belief may also have played a quiet role. The constellation Canis Major, the Great Dog, rises prominently in winter skies, anchored by Sirius, the brightest star visible from Earth, known as the Dog Star. Sirius was associated with heat, omens, and spiritual unrest in ancient cultures. While no direct link can be proven, the presence of a celestial dog blazing in the heavens may have subtly reinforced earthly visions of a supernatural hound watching from the darkness. Geography anchored the legend further. East Anglia's coastline is fragile, shaped by erosion and the North Sea's relentless pull. Villages have vanished beneath waves within recorded history. Churches once inland now stand near crumbling cliffs. This impermanence fostered a worldview where loss was expected and unseen forces felt close. Black Shuck became a symbol of that uncertainty, a reminder that land, life, and safety could be taken without warning. As centuries passed, the Hellhound entered literature. Writers of the Gothic revival drew upon regional folklore to craft tales of cursed families and haunted moors. The image of a gigantic spectral dog stalking the countryside found new life in novels and later inspired the shadowy canine guardians of modern fantasy, including those roaming the magical corridors of imagined schools and forbidden forests. Yet beneath these reinventions remained the old East Anglian fear, born of storms, darkness, and the fragile line between the known and the unknowable. By the time the industrial age dawned, Black Shuck no longer prowled roads as it once had. Gas lamps pushed back the night. Railways shortened distances. Science offered explanations where mystery once ruled. Still, the legend never truly faded. It settled into place names, pub signs, local festivals, and the quiet knowledge passed down in families who remembered where not to walk alone after sunset. And so the fire burns low. And the shadow of the great black dog still stretches across England's past, waiting patiently at the crossroads of history and myth, where the story continues. As the 17th century unfolded, the figure of Black Shuck deepened its hold on the imagination of Eastern England, not through a single tale, but through a slow accumulation of whispered encounters. Rural life remained bound to the rhythms of nature. Fields were plowed by hand, livestock guided along narrow lanes, and travel after sunset was avoided unless necessity demanded it. In such a world, stories served as both warning and explanation, shaping behavior as much as belief. Accounts from this period describe Black Shuck appearing at liminal places, bridges spanning dark rivers, crossroads where paths divided, and graveyards where the living and the dead lay nearest. These locations were already heavy with symbolic weight. Crossroads in particular were associated with spirits in English folklore, and suicides were sometimes buried there to prevent restless wandering. When Black Shuck appeared in such spaces, it reinforced the sense that the creature belonged neither fully to this world nor the next. Descriptions varied, yet certain details remained consistent. The fur was always black, darker than night, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. The eyes burned not with animal intelligence, but with something colder and older. Witnesses rarely described movement in ordinary terms. Black Shuck did not run so much as glide. Its presence felt more than seen. Dogs that encountered it were said to whine, flee, or fall silent, as if recognizing an authority beyond themselves. Scholars of folklore have long noted that such consistency across generations suggests a shared symbolic core rather than random invention. The black dog may have embodied collective anxieties tied to death, disease, and the unpredictability of life. East Anglia suffered repeated outbreaks of plague, harsh winters, and agricultural failure. In times when medical knowledge was limited, death often arrived without warning. Black Shuck became a shape into which that fear could be poured. Yet the creature was not always malevolent. Some stories told of Black Shuck walking beside lone travelers until dawn, ensuring safe passage through dangerous stretches of road. Others described it standing silently at a distance during funerals, watching without interference. In these moments, Black Shuck appeared less as a demon and more as a sentinel, acknowledging the gravity of transition without causing it. This dual nature distinguished it from simpler monsters and brought it closer to ancient guardian figures found across Indo-European myth. Comparisons have been drawn to Anubis of ancient Egypt, the jackal-headed guardian of the dead, who guided souls through the underworld and oversaw burial rites. While separated by geography and culture, both figures reflect humanity's attempt to personify death not merely as an end, but as a process watched over by something that understands its weight. Such parallels suggest that Black Shuck arose not from superstition alone, but from a deep psychological need to frame mortality within narrative. The physical environment of East Anglia further shaped the legend. The region's fens and marshes were treacherous, especially before large-scale drainage projects of the 17th century. Will-o'-the-wisp lights flickered above bogs, caused by gases igniting in the air. To the untrained eye, these wandering flames appeared intelligent, even purposeful. Combined with animal cries distorted by fog and wind, such phenomena created fertile ground for supernatural interpretation. A glimpse of a large black shape moving through mist could easily take on monstrous proportions. Church influence also played a role, though care was taken not to contradict religious doctrine. Black Shuck was often framed as a warning rather than an object of worship. Sermons referenced the dangers of straying from righteous paths, and folklore followed suit. To encounter the black dog while traveling dishonestly or engaging in wrongdoing was said to invite misfortune. In this way, the legend reinforced moral boundaries without directly challenging faith. By the 18th century, antiquarians began collecting these stories with a more analytical eye. Writers such as Abraham Fleming and later folklorists recorded sightings, attempting to separate exaggeration from observation. Fleming's account of the 1577 church incident emphasized physical damage and eyewitness testimony, preserving the story not as fantasy but as a historical anomaly. This preservation allowed Black Shuck to survive the Enlightenment. When many myths were discarded as relics of ignorance, the rise of printed books and newspapers transformed the legend once again. What had once been local whispers became shared narratives. Travelers carried the story beyond East Anglia, and variations appeared across Britain. In Yorkshire, a similar creature was called the Barghest. In Lancashire, the Skriker stalked lonely roads. Though names changed, the essential image remained: a black dog tied to death, transition, and the night. These regional cousins suggest that Black Shuck was part of a broader British tradition rather than an isolated anomaly. Yet East Anglia's version retained particular intensity due to its historical documentation and physical reminders. The claw marks at Blithburgh Church, though subject to debate, provided a tangible anchor. Stone, once marked, carried authority beyond words. As the 19th century arrived, industrialization altered the countryside. Roads improved, towns expanded, and night became less absolute. Even so, the Victorian fascination with the supernatural revived interest in old legends. Ghost stories filled parlors, and writers drew heavily from folklore to craft atmospheric tales. The black dog became a symbol of ancestral memory, haunting landscapes reshaped by progress. One of the most influential literary echoes appeared in Arthur Conan Doyle's The Hound of the Baskervilles. Though set on Dartmoor rather than East Anglia, the novel drew directly from black dog traditions. The image of a spectral hound stalking a family line resonated deeply with readers, demonstrating the enduring power of the archetype. From there, the Hellhound entered popular culture as both monster and guardian, adaptable to new settings while retaining its ancient core. In time, modern fantasy literature would reshape the image once more. Magical beasts guarding thresholds, enforcing boundaries, and responding to moral intent bore clear resemblance to Black Shuck's dual nature. While names and contexts changed, the underlying symbolism remained intact. The great black dog was never merely an animal. It was an idea given form. Today, East Anglia still honors the legend. Black Shuck festivals, local artwork, and historical tours keep the story alive. Rather than fear alone, there is now a sense of respect. The creature is understood as part of regional identity, a reminder of how stories grow from land and memory together. As night settles over the fens and the wind moves through reeds and hedgerows, it is not difficult to imagine a silent shape pacing just beyond sight, not hunting, not threatening, but watching. The firelight flickers, and the ancient presence remains, patient as ever, waiting for the final chapter to unfold. By the 20th century, Black Shuck had crossed fully from feared apparition into cultural memory, yet the transformation did not weaken the legend. Instead, it refined it. Scholars, writers, and local historians approached the black dog not as a superstition to be dismissed, but as a window into how earlier societies understood the world around them. Folklore was no longer seen as falsehood, but as a language through which communities expressed truths that could not be measured by instruments alone. Careful geographical studies revealed that many Black Shuck sightings clustered along ancient routes. Some followed Roman roads that once cut across East Anglia, their straight lines still visible beneath modern highways. Others traced medieval pilgrimage paths or old livestock droves. These routes were arteries of movement and risk, places where strangers passed, news traveled, and danger lingered. It was along these lines that the black dog most often appeared, reinforcing its role as a guardian of passage and transition. Environmental historians added another layer of understanding. Large black dogs were once common working animals in rural England, bred for guarding farms and herding livestock. In low light, their size and silence could appear uncanny. Wolves, though extinct in England by the late medieval period, remained vivid in cultural memory. The fear they inspired did not vanish with their disappearance, but transferred itself onto familiar shapes. Black Shuck may have been, in part, the echo of a predator that once shared the land. Psychology, too, offered insight without diminishing the mystery. Human perception is especially vulnerable at night when shadows distort scale and sound travels unpredictably. The brain, primed by stories heard since childhood, fills gaps with meaning. In this way, Black Shuck became a shared vision, reinforced each time it was retold. The consistency of the legend was not proof of deception, but evidence of a powerful communal narrative. Yet even as explanations multiplied, something essential resisted reduction. Black Shuck endured because it was never solely about fear. It was about boundaries, life and death, safety and danger, known road and unknown field. The black dog stood at the edges of these divides, neither pushing nor pulling, simply present. This presence gave form to uncertainty itself, allowing it to be named and remembered. In modern literature and cinema, the Hellhound evolved into a creature of clear purpose. Sometimes it hunted the guilty. Sometimes it defended sacred spaces. Sometimes it served powerful masters. These portrayals, while imaginative, simplified the original legend. The true Black Shuck of East Anglia was more ambiguous. It did not explain itself. It did not speak. It did not justify its appearance. It existed, and that was enough. This ambiguity is precisely what allowed the legend to inspire later fantasy worlds. In stories of magic and hidden knowledge, black dogs appear as guardians of forbidden corridors, watchers of ancient gates, and embodiments of protective magic bound by old laws. These fictional descendants carry forward the same ancient idea that some forces exist not to be understood, but to be respected. The connection between Black Shuck and the English landscape remains profound. Walkers along the Suffolk coast still pass ruined churches half lost to erosion, their graveyards tilting toward the sea. Inland, narrow lanes wind through hedgerows older than written history. At dusk, when the sky dims and sound softens, imagination needs little encouragement. The land remembers, even when people forget. Archaeological work in East Anglia continues to reveal how long humans have lived with uncertainty here. Prehistoric burial mounds dot the countryside. Roman artifacts emerge from plowed fields. Medieval churches stand atop older sacred sites. Each layer represents a different attempt to understand existence, mortality, and meaning. Black Shuck belongs to this continuum, a story layered atop stories, shaped by all that came before it. Importantly, the legend has never demanded belief. It asks only for acknowledgement. Whether seen as spirit, symbol, or shadow, Black Shuck reflects humanity's enduring relationship with the unknown. In a world increasingly illuminated, such darkness still has value. It reminds societies that not everything must be conquered or explained, that mystery itself can be a teacher. In East Anglia today, Black Shuck is sometimes portrayed with warmth rather than terror. Sculptures depict it standing watchfully, not snarling. Children's books reimagine it as a protector of villages. This shift does not erase the past, but integrates it. Fear has matured into understanding, and understanding into respect. As the firelight burns low once more, the ancient storyteller's voice softens. The black dog is no longer charging through church doors or stalking travelers in panic. It stands quietly at the edge of memory, its eyes reflecting starlight rather than flame. Above, the dog star still rises and sets, just as it did centuries ago, linking sky and story in silent agreement. Black Shuck remains what it has always been, a guardian of thresholds, a witness to human vulnerability, and a reminder that stories endure because they speak to truths deeper than fact alone. In the hush between footsteps and the pause before dawn, the legend waits, patient and unbroken, ready to walk beside history once more. If these ancient voices touched your heart today, please consider subscribing to Ancient Epics and ringing the bell so you never miss the next forgotten tale. Thanks for watching.